Broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's the Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham. This hour, we'll dig into Detroit's urban farming community and how one group is trying to restore connections to histories through the land and through food. Then, it's National Library Week. We're celebrating by learning more about the importance of libraries, and it's not just in a book. There's an array of offerings at public libraries, and Jeff Milo will fill us in, and we'll hear from a local author. But first, food is more than what's on your plate. It's a direct reflection of identity, of history. It's a reflection of access or lack of justice. And communities across this country, where you live can shape what you eat, how you eat, and even how long you live. Whose responsibility is it to actively repair these systems when we all collectively share this knowledge? The Joy Project is not only asking those questions, but working to create space for education and community healing through food. Founded by Detroit native Gabrielle Knox and Oakland native Jasmine Evans, the Joy Project wants to reconnect people with ancestral foodways and land practices. They aim to educate and spread joy through building historical and cultural relationships between Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities through the soil. Gabby and Jasmine join me now to talk more about food as justice, food as healing, and food as identity, and what it really looks like when everyone has access to food, culture, dignity, and community. Thank you both for being here.
Yeah, what up, though?
What up, though?
Peace. Thank you for having us.
Of course. So, Gabrielle, we're going to start with you, Gabby. We're going to start with you. You know, what does it take to make a space like the Joy Project?
What does it take to make a space like the Joy Project? That's an incredible question. I think it takes a vision, first and foremost. A lot of the work that we did was put on paper before it was actualized, right? A lot of conversations about what is the meaning of different areas, what is the placement and the preferred placement and plot plan of where these things should go. So we drew it on paper, right? We ideated about it. And then we also told our community, right? We shared that story and that vision and that idea with our community. And between the infrastructure in the city of Detroit and the farming community, in between that planning that we did and the people that showed up and showed out for us. That is how you create something like the Joy Project.
And Jasmine, for you, one of the little snippets that I read, you know, the Joy Project kind of was kismet. It was almost meant to be because of who Gabby is herself, where she grew up, the whole entire thing of it. But then your journey here. So for you, what does the Joy Project mean to you?
The Joy Project is like, I can't see it. The Joy Project is like an experimental laboratory space, honestly, for me. And Gabby and I were intentional about building that into our foundation and our programming around the Joy Project so that, we were friends and we talked. Gabby's a farmer and I'm a person that cooks food. So we would talk and share a lot of different stories and perspectives on interacting with these foodstuffs. And we created the Joy Project with enough definition, enough vision and mission that we could affect a particular thing, but also with enough space and looseness that as our particular interests, curiosities, desires, as those change over the years, we would still find ways to engage them through the container of the Joy Project so that it would never become like stale or like I'm over it, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. Like all of our interests and curiosities could be explored through the Joy Project. So for me, it's kind of a therapeutic practice. Sometimes I come there with questions, sometimes I come there with frustrations and I'm looking for answers. But just pretty much anything that I'm going through, anything that I'm listening to, any like niche lane of food that I'm nerding out about, I get to not only explore it myself through the work I'm doing with the Joy Project, but also share those spaces with other people who are coming to the Joy Project.
And we're definitely going to get more into that because I want to ask you a little bit more about how you go through your process of creating these historical dishes and making sure they stay true to what they are. We're going to get to that, but I do want to bring Gabby back into the conversation because, how is the Joy Project different from other community gardens that we hear about?
So I think that a thing about the Joy Project and the work that we do is first and foremost acknowledging that we are not the first people to do it, right? And that we are a part of a global conversation, a global remembering, and a global practice of tapping into our ancestral technology. And so just to say that, right?
Yes.
I think the Joy Project, given myself being in farming for a little over 15 years at this point, being able to watch the landscape of Detroit, right, and the infrastructure of urban ag kind of grow over that time, we have a wealth of infrastructure at this point, right, from mutual aid, organizers who are making sure that there's funds directly going to these farmers to produce the things that they're producing, making sure that there's a resource distribution. So we have tons of organizations that are doing all of that work. We have people who are doing nonprofit and work that is really just demonstration gardens, right? To kind of encourage and shift the culture, right? And get people to access this. We have people doing community gardens within their neighborhoods to beautify, to take up space, to supplement their meals. We have individuals that are doing for-profit, right, and building their capacity to supply to as many people as possible. And over that time, right, kind of observing all of the different, avenues of urban ag that have kind of grown over that time as it's grown larger and larger in the city of Detroit. For me, wanting to, a person that's done all those different things, right, all the different avenues, wanting to bring in the storytelling, wanting to bring in the culture, and wanting to, as Jasmine said, invite community into that. And so some of the difference in how Joy Project is operating is we deem our space as like a museum, right? It's a living archive, but it's also a museum in the way that you'll see things that our collections that have come from potentially some of our travels to Cuba, to Brazil, to these places that we may find ourselves, that we can bring back those stories, right, with the permission of those communities and share that information with people. Unlike a museum, you can watch those things grow, you can touch it, right, you can be a part of it. And I think that is part of the difference, right, is it is not so much it's not so much
Jasmine put her hand up like I have
it's not so much just the beauty of the plant. It is the story, it's the process, it's the people behind those seeds, and it ultimately is what happens to that food after it's harvested.
And Jasmine, I saw your hand go up.
I just wanted to add, like, on the storytelling piece that makes the Joy Project separate from a lot of what people may think when they're thinking about urban farming, is that we are putting the prioritizing the storytelling, right? You can tell people, oh, you should have this many servings of vegetables. You can tell people, oh, it's healthier if it comes from close to you. We tell people not to smoke cigarettes all the time, and people still do. But I think that adjacent to the movement work that organizations like DBCFSN are doing around food sovereignty, we also need to be telling people why, giving people an emotional connection, giving people a somatic experience around these foodways, to connect to them, their lineages, their DNA, these stories about who you are and why your identity is connected to these processes keeps people more likely to stay within that ecosystem, to stay committed to that work, as opposed to just saying you should do this because we said so. So that's the like lane that the Joy Project is trying to position ourselves to be in, is like the rhythm keepers of like keeping people engaged in these processes.
Because that's something that I think about all the time when I think about urban farming, the community itself, and just the buy-in, getting community members and residents to buy into the idea that it's important to know and understand the local food ecosystem around you, especially when we talk about the city of Detroit and, like you were saying, Gabby, how it's grown so much within the 15 years you've worked in it. So when we think about just, of course, making sure that we're honoring who was here before, making sure that we're paying attention to the original land stewards in general, because I want to stick to this. I want to stick to what Gabby was talking about in terms of like the indigenous folks who were here first and making sure you're sticking to those practices. What does it look like when the Joy Project does that in honoring those who were here before?
It looks like I'll tell you what it looked like for us, and I think it's a continual process, right? That I think everyone in community, if aware, is working to learn and be better at, and to continue to be open to growing. For us, it looked like not finding some obscure person, but people that are in our community, right? That we can identify as keepers, right, of information, people who are preserving the indigenous story, the indigenous foodways. And so tapping into those folks, right, telling them about the work that we're doing and how we're particularly centering Black people and the Black experience and the Afro-diasporic experience. However, we're aware what land we're on, right, and we're aware that these experiences don't happen in a vacuum, right? And so reaching out to our community looked like us offering an opportunity for us to learn from them. We invited them to our space. We walked the land. We talked about what our plan was, and then we asked them what if that sounded like a good idea, right? If that sounded like something that honored the legacy and the stories, specifically of the indigenous people of this land. We were recommended to do mounds, for instance, and taking the advice of how to grow, right, and what method to grow. They shared with us when we should sow our seeds, right, what specific time you should put in the corn for the Three Sisters, and what specific time you should put in the beans and the squash.
And this is based on, of course, the indigenous land keeping and the way that they would follow the different seasons and cycles in order to figure out what crops are going to work. So keep going. I mean, this is such a fascinating way that you all have been able to build the Joy Project.
Yeah, and I think for us, similar to, the entire purpose of the Joy Project, it's an honor to do tours, to invite people into this space, and to stop first in that space on our land and kind of have this conversation, right?
Jasmine.
So we have 4 pillars that we put the Joy Project upon: recognition, remembering, reconciliation, and restoration. And recognition is the first stop on our tour, and it's a demo space where we do the Three Sisters Growing, where people can come and see just what that process looks like, and we tell the story of how these plants are living and working together, stories that have been shared with us, technology that's been shared with us from indigenous communities. So it is so important to us, and that we've made it a point that as soon as you get to the Joy Project, our purpose is Afro-diasporic as Black people and where we've been and what we eat and where we grow. But before we get to that, let's talk about the fact that we are not, as Gabby said, in a vacuum here. We have this experience in another group of people who have a vested interest in this land as well.
Jasmine, as we're continuing on, and I want to build off of what you just said there, but let's go into remembering a little bit. The United States of America turns 250 this year. When we think about this history of this country, we think about the North Atlantic slave trade, the attempted erasure of Native cultures, and so much more. So much was lost during colonization. Jasmine, what happens when communities lose access to their food traditions?
Okay. Communities lose access to food traditions in these certain circumstances. Not just like a losing this. It's not just like a loss that just organically happens. These are things that are intentionally being done. The process of colonization, no matter where you look at it on the map, what continent you're on, what group of people, one of the very first thing that the person or the group of people who are attempting to colonize do is a disruption between the people and the land. And our relationship with the land is very directly connected to our relationship with food. And so when you are the product of, or you are living or experiencing the consequences of a diaspora, as we have through the transatlantic slave trade, you end up in this foreign place. For us, it wasn't it happened at home too in West Africa, but for us as descendants in this continent, it was happening here. So we brought to this foreign place, this foreign space. We don't see things that we're familiar with. And so much of culture, like there's no culture without agriculture. I always forget who said that. But so much of cultures are based around our relationship to land, and everything else is born out of that, whether it's fashion, music, all of that stuff starts with the land. And so anything else if you no longer have the relationship with the land, you also begin to lose those things as well. I don't remember what the question was, but I think that one of the things that we did have working to our favor, or one of the positives or redeeming things that was happening in that, is the relationship that Black people were able to build with the indigenous communities, to like, oh, we don't have coconut here, we don't have these particular things anymore, but let's have a relationship with the people who are indigenous to this land to show us what they're using, sassafras, and the different ingredients and ways that they relate to the land to create. Oh, we don't have sorghum anymore, but there's corn, and that's a similar thing. How do we put that in those spaces? So those things were happening as well. The question was around identity.
Yes, what happens when the community loses access to their food traditions?
When you lose access to that, you're losing access to your culture. You're losing access to who you are. You're losing access to all of the other technologies and tools that relationship with that land and that food gives you. I think I'm jumping ahead a little bit in topics, but for example, a dish like stewed tomato and okra, right? It's delicious. People like to eat it. If we lose that recipe, we lose a recipe to something delicious. But also one thing that recipe is teaching us is about seasonal relationships with land. Tomato and okra are usually coming ripe at the same time. They're also great companion plants to grow near each other and in proximity to each other. And so when you're cooking that dish, you're not just cooking a dish because I wanted okra and tomato. You're having a conversation about what is seasonal, what plants go together. And so there's this particular concepts of agricultural technology that are tied up in that. And so if you lose that dish and you lose access to that particular food, you also are losing the memory and understanding of these plants do well together.
And we're going to have to go to a break in a moment. But, Jasmine, just for a moment briefly, why is it important to preserve culture through food? Oftentimes when I'm eating a dish, I know that it's significant culturally, but I don't know why.
Okay, I think corn, even though it's indigenous to this continent and not specifically Black people, corn is a good thing to talk about that. Corn has such a bad rap. Empty food. It's not good for you. Don't eat it. Yeah. All of the genetic modifications and things that are happening with corn. But we're thinking about indigenous communities that they have been surviving off of this as a staple ingredient in their diet since before Jesus Christ was ever talked about, right? And so how does the entire community of people survive off of something that is empty and has nothing to offer you? There's a process that corn needs to go through called nixtamalization that makes all of the nutrients bioavailable to you. And therefore it supports life. When you don't nixtamalize corn, it's actually taking nutrition out of your body and slowly killing you from a disease called pellagra. Without the cultural context, though, to understand the process of nixtamalization, you're doing harm to yourself by consuming this corn. And right now, as the United States sends like subsistence crops to all of the developing nations and people who need aid and food, they're sending them corn, they're sending them wheat, but they're not sending the cultural context to know that this thing needs to be processed in a particular way. So they're actually not helping these people. They're causing more health disparities by introducing these foods to these foodways without the cultural context. So when you don't have the full picture, you don't have the full story, the food is not moving within its original people. They're not stewarding the stories anymore. When you extract just that item and not the full cultural context, you're actually doing more harm than you are doing good. So it's very important to keep the stories around these foodways.
It's extremely important. And
it's science.
It's science. I was going to say it's science, but it's like you said, it's manipulation of tools. It's manipulation of different technologies. And we're going to get into that more when we get back from this quick break. Right now, we're learning a little more about the Joy Project, the importance of local food systems, and the importance of reclaiming culture through food. Gabrielle Knox is the curator and farm manager for the Joy Project, and Jasmine Evans is a curator and steward for the Joy Project. You all stay right there. We'll be right back. This is The Metro. This is The Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham. We're speaking with the founders of the Joy Project, Gabrielle Knox and Jasmine Evans. We're talking about food as justice, as healing, and as identity, and what it really looks like when everyone has access to food, culture, dignity, and community. Before the break, we were explaining the cultural context around food practices and how colonization makes it hard to keep those stories alive. And I want to explain or get into the explanation of how that work you do at the Joy Project reconnects those things. So, Jasmine, when you're preparing a culturally significant dish that you've never prepared before, what are your steps to making sure you're doing that meal justice?
A culturally significant dish that I've never prepared before. I usually try to stay within a particular wheelhouse.
Okay.
If I don't have a connection to the culture, if I don't have a connection to the people, if I haven't been there, heard somebody's auntie or grandma talk to me about these processes, I usually give it some space and pause, or might tap somebody else to come into that space. But the kitchen, it's whether it's indoor or outdoor, that kitchen space is really a sanctuary. It's really church. You're communing with these elements, this earth, air, fire, and water, to make this meal that's going to become a person, essentially. Once they eat it, it becomes them. And when I'm doing that work with that fire, earth, air, and water, I'm communing with spirits. I'm not there alone in that kitchen. There are people who are with me in guiding my process and what I'm doing. And I just, it's about the learning process. It's about putting in myself in a space to consistently be a student and understand why these steps are important. So I don't do things like serve people raw collard greens because I know that the nutritional process, in order for me to absorb all of the benefits of that, they need to be cooked low and they need to be cooked slow to allow that nutrition thing to happen. So it's just being in a relationship with the foods, with the ingredients, and also the people.
Oh, yes. Gabby, please.
I'll give you an example, and if you want to elaborate on that, Jasmine, do. Speaking of the Joy Project, we have for the last 3 years been going to a butchery or a cookout, a large cookout. It's a hog roast that happens in South Carolina in relationship to peculiar pig farm in the Ross family. We've been traveling to South Carolina and getting to see not only a hog roast, but also folks who are 5 generations into raising hogs, right? We get to go to their farm. We get to see these hogs in different pens, the mothers and the little piglets, and they're raising them in the environment that they should be in, right? There's forest. They get to scratch, they get to have the environment that they need. But this event is centered in the family, right? And so the main purpose of the event is to actually harvest one of the non-bearing hogs for the year, divide that up amongst the family, and then also a demonstration and a community outreach. Because, we come from Detroit, but also, people all over are coming, other chefs, also people in community, right? Neighbors are coming to participate, to get crackling, to get pots of different cauldrons of greens and different things that are happening. And our experience going there is something that we can feed into our community, right? Being on the ground with them and then coming to Detroit. We do 2 hog roasts a year at minimum, and sometimes 3 at D-Town Farms Harvest Festival every year. We do lambs, we do hogs, but us being able to do that is directly informed by putting ourselves in a position, like Jasmine said, to be with those people, to learn with them, and be hands-on, right? To help them. We get up at 4:00 in the morning with them and start the fire, do the processes that they do, right? So we are learning this and getting that muscle memory to be able to share with our community.
And, because we're already getting down here to the wire, and it's just so many things that we want to get into. So before we get down to what's going on with the Joy Project in the summer and the spring and all types of things that you would like the community to know about the Joy Project, Can reconnecting with food traditions happen, though, when we see what's happening within our spaces? Food insecurity, money is tight. How do people reconnect with their food traditions or their cultural traditions through food if money's a little tight? Gabby, we'll start with you.
I'm gonna pass it to Jasmine, actually.
Jasmine.
I think that one thing that you'll find, at least for the food ways that I learn about and teach about, is that a lot of that food is what is considered affordable. A lot of the ingredients that we're using are things that have long been either not thought about, not appreciated, or neglected by popular food culture. Yeah. So a lot of the things that, if we're talking collard greens, if we're talking beans and rice and dishes like that, they're actually all pretty affordable. It's just learning how to work with those ingredients again to make them delicious and something that you actually want to eat, as opposed to something you feel like you have to eat.
That was another point that I continued to come back to. That point was, maybe I don't make these dishes because I don't know how these dishes work together or how these different ingredients work together, because I need to learn that education, but I just didn't have that touch base. So for you, both of you, educating the masses about just the food, the ingredients. Talk about the community aspect of that with the Joy Project and educating people and bringing people in, because it's not something that's easy to bring people in to learn this type of stuff, because they just may not think it's important for them to know it. So, Gabby, how do you use the Joy Project to educate the public?
I think within our event curation, we consider processes, and including those demonstration processes throughout. Oftentimes, people don't show up to already done food, right? They show up to collard greens that they got to pick the stems off of, right? They come to a place where they have to rinse those collard greens. There is a fire that we build and the cauldron that we put out and watch that whole process happen, right? They get to be a part of that here at the Joy Project. We also, in previous years, have done like butchering workshops, right? What does it look like to buy a whole chicken and then break that down so that you can have maybe legs and thighs today, and then tomorrow, you can take that backbone and you can take that and boil it up and make some bone broth, So these are conversations that we're having on site, not just in theory, but we're also putting people's hands into the work.
Yeah, and Jasmine, because oftentimes when we hear about these type of projects like the Joy Project, sometimes folks think to themselves, are you guys actually doing the work, or is this symbolic? Can you talk about how the Joy Project is also doing the work while also being the work, I guess you can say?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's been important for me, and one of the things that I've been learning, like you mentioned, I'm not from Detroit, and a lot of the work that I do with the Joy Project, I actually just benefit from the work that Gabby has been doing for their lifetime in building community. So I have direct access to an already established community, which is a thing that people need to consider when trying to do work, is that you start in community and out of a conversation that's already happening, and people that you're already in community with telling you that this is what we want, this is what we need somebody to do this work. And then you begin to do that work, as opposed to being like, I want to start this project. How do I galvanize energy around it? You start it by being part of somebody else's community and being in service of that, and then realizing that you have something to offer to a community that's already established. So when it comes to doing programming and reaching out to people and engaging people and teaching people, it's not always difficult. It's difficult to bring new people in, but finding people that want to learn and connect to this is not difficult for us, because we're already in relationship and community and providing this space because people have asked us to.
Now let's get into the seed library, the idea of the seed library. I've seen that you all have been swapping with so many folks. I saw you at the Arab American Museum not too long ago. So talk about that community that you're building through the seed library. Gabby, we'll start with you.
So we have an actual, what you would think of as like a newspaper rack, outdoor rack, that we have partnered with an artist, Chanel Beebe. So again, working with community, bringing people in to actually help to amplify some of these conversations. And we did last year, about October, November, we did an opening of that library. And and with the goal of us being able to keep the seeds that we grow. So we have some hibiscus that came from our seed this year, loofah that came from our seed this year, cotton that came from our seeds this year that we'll be planting, and keeping those items, right, so that we can share with others. And I'll stop there and pass it to Jasmine, who has some really lovely ideas about the seed library's life and how it shows up in community.
I think that the concept of seed library is just important. Seed saving. There's a lot of movement now by big seed corporations to disenfranchise people from the ability to be able to grow and keep their own seeds and sow it. That inserts a person that you have to spend cash with in order to have access to food to feed yourself. And that is just, it is anti-human to me. So the concept of having this seed library is really important. But one of the things that we want to do with this seed library is to create these particular collections of seeds that allows people to tap directly into the storytelling. So there's like a Gullah Geechee kit, a Caribbean kit, a West African kit, an herbal kitchen kit, like a hoodoo kit. So all of these different perspectives and pathways of these different diasporic food conversations being held within like a package of seeds. So it's not just like you'll come and be like, oh, where are the carrots, or oh, where are the peas? I want to grow tomatoes this year, or whatever. You're like directly engaging with the full story just by coming to pick up a pack of seeds.
And I can go on and on about the importance of education, especially when we talk about food. I definitely want to have you guys back so we can continue this conversation. Before I let you both go, this summer, there are so many different things that are happening, ways that people are looking to connect with community. You all have community work days at the Joy Project. You just started them up this past Saturday. And then as well, you have a few other things that you have offered, or you're offering this summer through the Joy Project. Jasmine, first things first, the community work days. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, this year is our 5th year, and it's a little more lax and informal than it has been in previous years, with Gabby taking on the position as the director of the Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund, and me launching Indigo Culinary Co. We've had a lot less time and energy to put in to sit around coming up with content, and we need to do better about building up community that has ownership over the space to help us do these things. So we're working on that this year. But Saturdays, pretty much every Saturday of the season, we're open from 10 to 2 for people to come out. 1105 Alger Street as the Joy Project in the North End off the Holbrook exit. But we also do Juneteenth is a big day for us, and we always do our celebration on June 19th. So whatever day of the week that falls on, we'll be having our Juneteenth celebration. I think it's on a Friday this year. And then the weekend closest to Fannie Lou Hamer's birthday, we do our closing, we call it our Harvest Festival, Fannie Lou Hamer Day, where we do the whole hog roast. And we're literally out there all day. We start the night before to do the hog. And so we're out there from Friday into Saturday. And often folks will hang out until Sunday just on the land together. So yeah, those are our 2 biggest days is Juneteenth and our Harvest Festival, but we usually have Watermelon Day sometime in August, and these other like smaller events to invite people in to engage with the work. But like school groups come, people reach out to us to come and have access to the space. You can always, whatever contact information is online is valid information, and you'll find a human to respond to you if you want to figure out how to come in and be on the land with us.
I was going to say that is true. I've been in contact with Jasmine and Gabby from Instagram to email. So yes, it is very true. 30 seconds or less if we can, Gabby. What are you excited for people to learn about the Joy Project?
I am excited for people to learn about our expansion, to see over time how it grows, right? I think we're going into season 5. There's a lot of things that are gonna kind of come back. There's a lot of plants that you'll see again, but every year there could be different plants, right? There's some seeds that we're gonna be growing that we got from Cuba in our recent trip, and I'm excited for those stories to come through. So every year, it may be a different place and a different space that we're telling stories and centering. And so I'm excited about that.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us. Gabrielle Knox, curator and farm manager for the Joy Project. Jasmine Evans is a curator and steward for the Joy Project. And every Saturday until the weather turns cold again, the Joy Project will host community work days from 10 to 2 p.m. As well, keep in touch for community seed exchanges, as well as the Juneteenth celebration, and the Harvest Festival. Thank you both for joining us on the
Thank you so
Metro.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
Peace.
Coming up, people are rushing back into libraries after pandemic-era lows. What's driving the resurgence? Jeff Milo from the Ferndale Library and host of My Local here on WDET, as well as Lisa Pierce, author of Motor City Love Song, will join me to discuss. You all stay right there. This is The Metro.